Good morning. How are you today? Pastor Rusty, Calvary Baptist Church. And I want to come to you today with some thoughts. I was looking in Matthew chapter 10, around verse 16. Jesus said, I send you out as like sheep among wolves, right? Then he says he wants us to be wise as serpents, but harmless as doves. And this is what he told his disciples. So listen to that. He knowingly sending us out, the disciples, as sheep among wolves. Well, you can imagine what that's actually like, right? A wolf doesn't care about political correctness or those kind of things when he's hungry for sheep. He's just going to go get that. And you think about what Jesus is teaching here. He wants us to go out. He wants us to do kingdom work. But in this kingdom work, we are to be harmless. We are not to bring harm. We are to be like doves. Wise as a serpent, subtle as a serpent, another way to say it, or, knowing like a serpent. Now, we're not supposed to act like serpents, but we're supposed to be wise like a serpent, and our actions should be harmless. And, it got to me thinking, I read a devotion from a person, and he talked about fierce devotion and intense loyalty to our God. Now, you think about, like the Hasidic Jews. You think about Jesus in his day and how he was intensely loyal to his God and to the law and to the teachings, and he had fierce devotion to his God. He said, no matter what, not my will, but thy will be done. And so you see there's this fierce devotion to God. I'm going to do what God asked me to do. I'm going to live my life in holiness, which means uniqueness, separated in a life that is devoted, fiercely devoted to God. And then there's a sense of intense loyalty there. Not, let me hear what the best argument is. And you think about, being harmless as a dove and yet wise as a serpent. The Pharisees and the Sadducees and the Sanhedrin, they would try to question Jesus and they would try to catch him and trip him up. They were fiercely devoted to their schism of what they considered to be truth, and they had intense loyalty. But Jesus sends us out, and I got thinking about how that works out in our life. I mean, in what ways are we not harmless? Are we running our mouth? Are we creating disorder? Are we standing for our rights as Americans and willing to fight and go tooth and nail? And I wonder, is that like a sheep among wolves? Or should we practice our loyalty to God and our devotion in such a way that we affect the world around us? You think about the disciples and how they went out hated by Rome. It didn't take long at all until Rome was coming down on Christianity. And you think about all the things that happened. You think about Paul, and yeah, he was harmless. I mean, he was arrested several times. He went and did the teaching and the preaching, even though they knew they were going to arrest him. He knew that. And yet when he was out, he also was familiar with the laws of the land. He knew what it meant to be a citizen of two countries. And he knew they could not do certain things to him. And so he would just show that. He was totally wise and yet harmless. You never hear of, except before Paul comes to Christ, you never hear of him being involved in any acts of violence at all, but willingly went and lay down his life. And so that makes me ask a couple questions that we could ponder on for the next week. I would wonder, in what ways are we wise? And, you could probably make a list about that. In what ways are we harmless? And you could probably work out things that way. But you may be able to say, in what ways should we be more harmless than we are or more wise than we are? Where can we, if we were going to practice fierce devotion and intense loyalty, what are some things that we know we can work on? How can we improve? How can you improve in wisdom and in harmlessness? In what ways do we need the gentle direction and nudging of the Spirit into a stronger walk of fierce devotion, intense loyalty, to even the teaching to be harmless as a dove? Are we fiercely devoted to that teaching of Christ? Are we intensely loyal to the teachings that Christ gives us in the Scripture? Are those the things that we guide ourselves, our reactions? So think about your interactions and your relationships. Any of them broken? Any of them that you can repair? Any that, any people that you have accosted verbally, being a Karen in this world, going to have your rights and your way? Or could you have maybe been a little more sheep-like, a little more dove-like in your interactions? If you can see that, then you can correct that. And if you can look back with your life, on your life with wisdom, you can then make those adjustments so that your future looks different than your past. Choice is up to you. I'm Pastor Rusty, and I'll talk to you later.